Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Sunday again, 6 o'clock. So there is a power cut in Sri Lanka, some of the areas. So even our main speaker is due to join at 6:30. So since we are recording it anyway, so I will start an outline and then we'll take it from there. Today is an important day because we are now trying to see what can we do individually and collectively to help Sri Lanka recover from bankruptcy. And this is an ongoing issue, and many people are trying to do many things. But let's discuss and see how we can go forward and what would be the best way. So I was planning to talk about 10 minutes. And Professor Lakshman Disanayak was going to talk on how to avoid anarchy in this environment for about 20-25 minutes. And Captain Elmo Javadana has sent me a letter asking whether I can read that, which is also quite a good letter, named A Trojan Horse in the Avanawaya. Mervyn Silva was planning to talk, but he's not ready today, so he will talk at a later date. So after that, then we can enter a discussion. So we are in a serious situation. We have, as a country, we have come to a bankrupt category. And as in, like in a ship, if you started to sink, we need to start with collective action. Everyone has to do something urgently, quickly, to try and rectify the problem, at least the cause of the sinking, and then we can plan a recovery. So it's important that as many people in the country have recognized that this is an urgent situation that needs to be sorted. So to start with, if a ship starts sinking, then obviously you need to find what has happened. The root cause analysis is important. Similarly, now if we have a bankruptcy situation, there is a need to have a root cause analysis. We thought the governance should take leadership on finding the root cause and then finding out why, and then try to fix it. Say, for example, here is our economy is in a problem, and there's absolute wastage of a lot of money from there with a kind of a bucket with holes. And why not at least try to reduce the wastage, like the number of political positions that is there, number of foreign missions that is there, and the corruption that's going on, and so on. But unfortunately, for now 2 weeks, nothing has been done, either to fix the leaks or to recover what is lost. So we are still having the same situation of losses. So even if we start trying to fill the bucket, we will not start to recover. So bankruptcy has resulted in serious difficulty for Sri Lankan citizens. There's no foreign reserves, there's no fuel, no power, no food, no medicines, huge inflation, and rupee devalued more than 1/3 already. So the public outcry was to say leadership, family should be out, because the leadership should really be trying to help if they're truly concerned to come out of the problem and so on. So this all over the country, you had various protests taking place, and it's still going on. Unfortunately, there was violence erupted in one place by the police, and one person was killed in Ramukkana. Now, basically, even the law, not the makers, the police who are trying to implement some order should realize that with this kind of activity, what they are doing is the poor versus poor activity. So whatever they do is going to make it worse for all of us, not just the police, but also for the Sri Lankan citizens. So we have to work together to try and recover, because the violence is not going to help us. So 14 days have gone and the government has no recovery action or plan yet. The root cause, nil attempt to find the root cause as far as I can see, and we are seeking more loans from the IMF. So we really need to fix the problem, although we are trying to get the loans from IMF, because if our wastage is continuing, we are not going to recover. Now, this is from Today Business Times. The government is still continuing money printing amidst unrest. Now, this is going to increase inflation for us again and again and again, and huge amounts of money has been printed already. So the value of rupee is obviously going to go down, and the citizens are going to feel the hardships more and more and more. And that will end up in violence and looting and various other things. That's what we don't want. The Island editorial, this is from yesterday, say deliver or depart. And there was a sentence exactly like this. What the main political parties are doing during the country's worst ever economic crisis is like the members of a family fighting over property matters while their mother is in the ICU, instead of helping the doctors struggling to save her life. The government has chosen to stay put. This is not really very good situation. It's in fact an opportunity. We lost opportunities to unite in the past, but at least we can unite here, look back and rethink, get involved, whatever the designation, color, gender, race, qualifications, irrelevant, just get involved. Say all areas are valuable, needs evaluation, realistic application of it. And that do what we can individually, do what we can collectively, and maintain continuous progress so that we will find a resolution eventually. Otherwise, we will not have a motherland as such in the future. Now, the IMF, we know a team from Sri Lanka went to IMF and they issued a statement that comes from yesterday. This was issued by IMF team and IMF Communication Department. But I want to read this paragraph. It's very, very carefully written, and it will tell you what they really want from us. The discussions covered, that means their discussion with our team. The discussions covered recent economic and financial developments in Sri Lanka, the need for implementing a credible and coherent strategy to restore macroeconomic stability, and the importance of stronger social safety nets to mitigate the adverse impact of the current economic crisis on the poor and vulnerable. The IMF team welcomed the authorities' plan to engage in a collaborative dialogue with their creditors. So they will try to help, but we have to do our things as well. So what is highlighted there is that stronger social safety nets to mitigate the adverse impact of the current economic crisis on the poor and vulnerable. Obviously, we have not done anything to implement this kind of situation so far. So this is again another letter that came from the Association of Sri Lanka Academics in Japan. They highlighted a few things I thought are important. How did Japan build a prosperous and peaceful society? So they summarize a few things, which I thought I'll bring up. Anyone in power, whether a political leader, a high-level government official, or an industrial leader, either resigns or is removed from power if responsible for committing an act of losing public trust. So the Japan works with public trust. Their leaders maintain public trust, whether they are political or institutional. If they lose public trust, they will resign. That's the only thing that they will do. Then an independent, accountable bureaucracy appointed based on merit ensures the rights of the public and makes sure that the government functions according to regulations, even when there is political instability. This is another important aspect on them, so that on merit only they'll have institutional leaders, not parachutes from them somewhere. Then separation of the powers of the legislative, executive and judiciary has been sacred. It's sacred, that means sacred. And this has ensured checks and balances against success. Now, this is a good model if we maintain the independence of each institution. That's the legislature, executive, and judiciary. Unfortunately, we don't have that. So further, in Japan, people are free from wants and fear of prosecution and violence. The vulnerable are protected. Opportunities are made available for all citizens to fulfill their aspirations. So these are some things that we can learn from other countries who's recovered from rock bottom. Now, the Federation of University Teachers Association also published a letter in English as well as in Sinhala and Tamil this week. And they have proposed many things in their letter. It's a long letter. But at the beginning, they said that the president, prime minister, and the cabinet should heed the people's call and resign, facilitating the political reforms demanded by the people, including the abolition of the executive presidency. So that's our academics' view. So Professor Disanayake was going to talk on how can we get over this financial crisis and avoid anarchy in this catastrophic environment. I'll come back to him. I made him a course, so he will realize that. Okay, so then there was this letter which was sent to me by Captain Elmo Jayawardena, and I will stop sharing that, maybe share that letter and read it out. The letter from Captain, he runs a charity. He's a retired captain and a Trojan horse in Devannaoya. Aren't we all wondering what is going to happen to our beloved country? Sri Lanka and Sri Lankans are at a bewildering juncture, more like an oversized jigsaw puzzle with some of the vital pieces missing. Sajid leading the opposition says Gota and MR must go, and the 20th Amendment should be abolished. That is their unwavering demand. It certainly is an appropriate ultimatum for which the SJB is determined not to budge. That is also the main anthem of the Goldface uprising, and it should rightly be the stubborn stand of everyone, be they organizational or individual, protesting against the current set of rulers. As I write, it has been almost 2 weeks since the onset of the uproar that is currently bursting at the seams with rapid expansion. This is not ruckus caused by hired hooligans bought with a rice packet, a bottle of arak, and a few thousand rupees. This is much, much more, definitely the real deal. It is a gathering of people of all ethnicities, all religions, and all walks of life, rising as one voice against the tyranny of the current regime ruling our precious motherland. The uprising is not limited to Goldface. It is spread across the island. The sentiment is encroaching into the very souls of Sri Lankans everywhere in the world. The clear definition of it all is simply people's power, wild as a hurricane gathering momentum. Currently, it is causing gigantic waves, encompassing everyone connected to Sri Lanka. The mood today is anger and frustration, and it is seeping into the very souls of every Lankan. The crowds are everywhere. They are carrying Go to Go Home placards and protesting in London, Los Angeles, Melbourne, plus other big cities where Sri Lankans are domiciled. The entire anger has spread like wildfire, and yet the rulers of Lanka act as they are exempted from retribution. The world stage stands in front of them with such powerful leaders like Louis of France, Shah Nicholas, and Romanov family, Shah of Iran, and plus a host of others who thought they were invincible. History is full of demigods who underestimate the rage of the proletariat and paid dearly for that mistake, sometimes with their lives. Sadly, other than a few poultry-sticking plaster patches applied to deter the tide, the current rulers have not shown any positive reaction to the demands of the multitudes. They are taking futile stopgap actions till such time alternate arrangements could be made to retain or regain their power. The entire government reaction looks like a lopsided Greek tragedy, a minor Iliad being recasted, of course, without Helen. They seem to be bringing a Trojan horse to Devannaoya, complete with tableau. Odysseus is already in Washington meeting the Romani barons. Does anyone know who accompanied him? SLPP got 40 of their minions to walk across and take their seats with the opposition. Doesn't that look more like a battle strategy than an act of individual political conviction? Now they also put together a new cabinet with the B team on display. We all know such matters could be changed at any time at the whim and wish of the president. All these are the visible situations, and it sure looks like there is a Trojan horse in Devannaoya. After all, can one sanely imagine that these 40 playing musical chairs will vote against the SLPP if a crucial vote is called for by the speaker? Is there a time-tested way out of this quagmire? No, of course not. Yet, we all know change is imperative, even if it is a matter of falling from the frying pan into the microwave. Anyone who is protesting against the royal family should not settle for anything less than the power change at the top. 20th Amendment has to be abolished. Otherwise, what will happen to Sri Lanka will be the same thing that happened to the all-powerful city of Troy, broken, burned to cinders, and only the ashes to remain. So far, there is one sorrowful death. Let's not that Ramukkana man's innocent life be lost in vain. Chaminda Lakshman was no criminal, just an ordinary citizen waiting to buy petrol for his motorcycle. He was no different to you or me, and now he's dead. Why? This is our country, and we've had enough. Captain Elmo Jayawarden, that's his email is also there. So if you want to, Mervyn Silva, are you there?
Briefly go through my initial thoughts, maybe build on it and in more up-to-date information and do a presentation later. Yeah, my initial thoughts were that, yes, it's a tragedy. It's extremely painful situation the country is going through. And during its 74 years of independence, Sri Lanka has been through several of those. For a little island, a disproportionate amount. And compared to many, I would think this is the biggest, even more than tsunami, because tsunami, however bad it was to a certain part of the country, and here no one has escaped, and it even impacts Sri Lankans abroad or outside. So while taking a negative, painful view of the situation, and in sort of technology language, which is my area, they use the term disruptor. This is a massive disruptor Sri Lanka is facing. A disruptor is generally forced, a disruption like this is generally forced upon a society, a population, and we have nobody embraces it voluntarily. But whether one likes it or not, faced with a disruption of this scale, a bit like COVID, what we are facing through is forcing change. Status quo is not an option. It forces people, even the ones who are reluctant, to think differently and act differently. So Sri Lankans, in response to many disruptors in the past, had this habit. We are somewhat complacent, we are extremely tolerant, and we don't engage. We just brush aside our dust and try and return to what we think is a normal life. But this is an opportunity, this is an option that should force us all to take a new look. And fortunately, the signs are that we are. And also, faced with the situation, we also have got some unprecedented, the opportunity we are facing is somewhat unprecedented. Someone was telling me yesterday, for example, the COVID was heaven sent. I mean, it's not a popular thing to say, but Because of COVID, a couple of, the entire planet obviously learned to behave differently, communicate differently, work differently. And things like Zoom that we are using currently, yes, it did exist in its infant form, but did not get the scale of use that we all or you do today to communicate. And so is the use of social media to unite, to engage, to bring people together. So that was a technology change that was there, but people started using in response to work, to communicate, to engage, to work with each other. Now, in addition to that, the COVID and also whatever happened in the country has brought in the hunger, the poverty, the pain, the anger the nation is facing. And those two come together along with ideas elsewhere, like the Arab uprising, Arab Spring, so-called. This model has been tried elsewhere, and the young people in different parts of the world protesting against the climate disaster the planet is facing. So the young people have learned from these models that they are far more engaged, far more informed than our rulers like us to be. In a way, the mainstream media, countries like Sri Lanka has been using in the past. Sri Lanka over the years, since the 1960s, if I remember right, by nationalizing the private press and pretty much making the media the government mouthpiece, whether it's television or paper, was following the North Korean, Chinese, and Russian model to brainwash and give people one version of the truth, and pretty much telling people how to think the leader's thoughts. It's like the North Korean leader, whatever he does, people have to adore him and admire him. So that's the model that we have been going on. But unfortunately for them, and fortunately for Sri Lankans, our people are young, they are bright, they are very alert, and they are very, very good at using these things, and they have absorbed a lot of those things that has happened in the world, and using that very effectively to bypass and pretty much brush aside the government mouthpiece and think and engage for themselves. And within this, the thing that I admire most is compared to the many revolutions we have seen, whether it's the Russian Revolution, the French one, or even some of the versions of the Arab Spring, is that the example, the discipline of our people is remarkable. And despite many attempts to provoke them as an excuse to get the army onto them, and they have resisted, I think that's admirable. While we may be classed as a beggar nation at the moment, excuse me for saying it, but there is no other way. All the global media are reporting our dire straits. And we haven't got many things to feel proud about, at least at the moment. But I think the discipline, the sheer wit, and the skills and the self-restraint of our young people is remarkable. And perhaps that is where we would go down in case studies as the Sri Lankan Spring, if you like, how it was different from the Arab Spring. And I dearly hope, and I'm not more than hope, I'm actually increasingly more confident that this discipline approach, the engagement and the ongoing pressure will force the people to think. And sooner or later they realize that these recycled solutions that they keep throwing in front of people, the local people won't buy, the international community won't buy. And also the IMF, I know they are international organizations, so they have to use a very, very neutral, impartial language in saying what they have to say, but they know the story as good as anybody else, and hope the people in power have the intelligence or wisdom to understand what is being told. They can decode what's being said from every quarter and realize that there's only one solution: stability, credibility and effective plan as the only way that this can be solved. And yes, those communities can help. I'm sure there are a lot of other people, countries of goodwill that are available to help. Certainly, Sri Lankan diaspora, I have spoken to several Sinhalese or Tamils, are prepared and willing to help, but credibility is a key thing. And at the moment, the B team, as Tula, you pointed out, is far from having any credibility for anybody to take them seriously. So just to conclude my initial thoughts, the protest should continue until the president and the government resigns, because as the causes of the problem, however much they try, they have demonstrated beyond any doubt that they lack any ability or the commitment, sincerity to solve this problem. They have a different agenda. And another comment somebody made, it made me think was, yes, everybody is asking them to go, asking them to step down, etc., etc. But there is a reason why, perhaps everybody needs to understand that there is also a reason why, what stops them from going. Now, those of you who are old enough to remember Idi Amin's regime of terror in the 1970s, some appalling things he did, including cannibalism. But at the end of the day, perhaps the technologies, the communication wasn't as developed as now. Well, so we were reading a lot of that on newspapers and a little bit on television. But at the end of the day, he got away. The victims never saw justice. He escaped to Saudi Arabia, declared that he's a devout Muslim, and he had a very comfortable living until his natural death, protected by the Saudi regime. Now, at least while that justice was never achieved, he had a get out. He had somewhere to go, therefore he left. And what appears to be, in my understanding, what's happening in Sri Lanka is, some people believe the president has lost it and is willing to step down, but he's being propped up and told to stay by his elder brother and the family. And the reason being they have too much to lose. The day he loses executive power as the head of the state, and he loses all that immunity, if he were to fly out, he could be arrested by authorities of another country. Or if he steps down as the president or one as prime minister, the moment they lose that layers of security, special task forces and all that, they could be very vulnerable. So that could be one of the reasons why they are holding to it for their own safety, personal safety, physical safety, as the safety and security of their wealth. So after the 2015 elections, when Mahinda refused to vacate, giving all sorts of reasons why he was the legitimate elected leader, and I understand there was a deal done by Ranil Wickremesinghe meeting him and promising a safe passage, offering a helicopter to transfer him to Madamulana. Now, so at least saving face, ensuring security to leave Colombo, go to where he was, and ensure his passage. But this time around, he may not even feel safe in Madamulana. That could be a reason why the hesitancy to leave. So while I have no solution to offer, some people came, Uganda might be the solution. It is open to debate. But that could be one of the reasons that is holding up the show, why the family is so reluctant. The two key players are so reluctant to step down. Just moving on, there are various labels that are being used. My initial thought to break out of this impasse is to have, I don't know, council of elders, like in a business world, like a board of non-executive directors, who have the credibility, who represent the population, taking responsibility to appoint a team of 10, 12 people of caliber, of reputation, the qualification and credibility, having delivered I was just coming out of the supermarket as this more lunchtime. I thought the way this supermarket is run, I don't know, there are something like 800 branches on the country, ensuring every bit is available and the customer's experience is consistent. The chief exec gets paid something, I understand, something like £3 million a year, but I believe he deserves it. Somebody capable of caliber delivering day after day. The day they can't deliver, they are chucked out. And so it's the story in the British football clubs. They get the best possible people in the world, give them the top salaries if they are not tempted to steal, but their every move is watched and they're accountable. So what we need is some world-class players of caliber. I don't know. I'm not even fussy about whether they are Sri Lankan, because they have no political power. These are very much executives brought in to deliver, turn the country around, both our economic problem, get it out a very quick solution, and then also getting our structures restored to what it should be, fit for the purpose, and then holding the elections with criteria that anybody who would come to parliament should, in my opinion, should at least have a credible degree and possibly years of industry experience in an area that's relevant to the country. And anyone has any trace of criminal record should be automatically disqualified from applying. And they all should declare their assets, where they have and how they have earned it, and that should be open for scrutiny. And yeah, so to say constitution amended and proper elections conducted to return to a democracy. We don't want this executive presidents, because sad to say, yes, there are executive presidents in the US, in France, elections are going on today. And Sri Lanka also has jumped into the bandwagon and created one. In my opinion, our executive presidency template was drawn to fit the ego of Jaya Jayawardena. And even he did not quite fill, his personality's ability did not quite fill the template. He made mistakes, didn't quite deliver what he drew that template to deliver. And then people who fit into that one after another were so small, so minute, that they never fitted into that. They got all the benefits and the authority given to that privilege, but they underperform and let the country down. And unfortunately, it is so tightly drawn up that we are struggling, countries reeling to get rid of it. And in my opinion is that Sri Lankan temperament, our culture, our history does not lend itself to that model, because we still have got this very traditional thinking, tribalistic thinking in our heads, unfortunately. The moment we get into the throne, we feel paralyzed that we can't get out. We all like to die now in the throne. We have seen it too many times. So these are my initial thoughts, folks. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mervyn, for summarizing all aspects in the short term and long term that you propose and that is relevant, which is obviously very relevant. And then we have to get together if you want to implement. That's where the crunch starts. And Udita has actually raised the hand. Udita, are you there?
Yeah. Is it okay if I tell something?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the things Mervyn mentioned was that what stops them from going. Now, I broadly agree with what Mervyn said. Now, if you take some other examples, Saddam had every power in the land at that time, right? But when he lost power from top, he went less than the bottom, because he was in the underground bunker for a few days.
Until I fished him out.
So from top in the country, he went to the lower. Similar thing happened to Gaddafi. So the dilemma the current leaders have is, because of the skeletons in their cupboard, right? One thing is they want all power to suppress suppress the judiciary and the law and the processes, if they have to give up that, it automatically means that most likely some of them or all of them in a proper country where if law and order prevails, they will end up in jail. So this is the dilemma. Now, if today's president was DB Wijayatunga, for example, he didn't have any skeletons in his cupboard. He would have been happily given up his presidency and gone for retirement. So the dilemma for these leaders is not just giving up the power and going into quiet life, but they know the alternative is ending up in jail. So
Yeah.
this is what is holding them back.
Yeah.
And so, as Mervyn said, it is not only the president, but the whole family is probably preventing him giving up power.
Yeah.
Now, it is important to look at why do our politicians who have been over the last 7 decades have been tarnished with this greed for money. Why do they, a politician, you could say that, they could uh, want a good house, good car, they want houses for their children and whatever it is. But they go beyond that, isn't it? They want billions.
Mhm.
Now you need to ask, why do they want billions? That's where Sri Lanka has lost so much the money of the country. They want money to buy people. They want money to buy the law and order. So if they are in a particular district, they want money to buy the police inspector, police superintendent, or everyone to cover their crimes. They want money to for election spending. I feel that one of the main things in a new changed Sri Lanka, which hopefully could happen, is that the election spending has to be curtailed uh, strictly. The thing is, these days, if a politician earns, we'll say their salary and all the benefits come to 10 million, they will spend 30 or 40 million to get elected. Now, this is where all the corruption comes. And when they get elected, they feel that they have got a right to earn that money to get elected. And they have to pay off so many people they pay off by awarding contracts and awarding uh, everything possible. So one of the main things is you should have a level playing field with regards to election spending. I think that happens in UK. And professionals cannot come into elections because they don't have that sort of money. So election spending is one of the most important things to have a level playing field so that professionals can get in and all the they feel they should not, they to prevent them feeling that once they get elected they have to anyhow uh, pay this money to various people they have who have contributed to their election. Asset declaration is also absolutely vital. I know it is there now, but there are so many loopholes, and as a result, only handful of people have declared their assets. There should be no gaps in that. It should be anyone who wants to get elected should absolutely, there are no ifs, buts, or no's. They have to declare their assets, right? And uh, so when they have got loopholes, no one declares their assets, and this gives an open warranty for them to continue plundering. I was listening to Chandrika Kumartunga yesterday, and she was telling about Norochole, the contract. Um, she said that when she was in power, it was negotiated for $250 million or something like that, and ultimately it was given to some $525 million for people who didn't even have not two or three people who have got together and formed a company, and it was given, and therefore Sri Lanka lost more than about 15 billion rupees on that. Now this raises a fundamental question: what are the national standards of awarding contracts, right? This is where all the politicians um, try and manipulate the system. There should be an independent government organization who should scrutinize all contracts, whether it's million rupees or billion rupees, right? And they should give an independent opinion where whether the contract has been offered in a accepted way. Now, I can't understand why Chandrika Kumartunga said that it was given to few people who formed a company. There should be a track record for uh, every company who track record, not for 1 or 2 years, about 10, 20 years track record of doing things. A few years, about 10 or 15 years ago, I was listening to Sri Lanka, when I was in Sri Lanka, listening to a program where in Nuwara, the director of the hospital has given a contract to make a sort of surgical theater to an ordinary mason, right? He didn't have any clue about what standard should go into that, and everything started the wall started cracking, and it was not suitable, it was not. So there should be standards, and this is why a particular Sri Lanka government should have an independent uh, department, maybe consisting even tens of thousands of people, to scrutinize all contracts, and they should give the go ahead at each stage before awarding contracts. And I don't know. I mean, I was involved in a very limited contract. That's the only contract I was involved. When in my previous hospital, we were going to give this thing to another group every year. The contract was renewed, and I was the only consultant. And before that, I thought, oh, I should have the main say because I'm the only consultant. Therefore, I should have the main say in awarding the contract. No, I was just one of about 10 people consisting of physios, OTs, nurses who had equal this thing. We had to score everything at every level. And it was given at the end, the decision was taken based on the scores of all. And I mean, these my only experience. But what I'm saying is there should be there should be systems at each level of government to make sure that these sort of systems are there, and the politicians should not be involved in award of any contract. The contract should be awarded by the professionals, right? Politicians could take the policy decision in the parliament level, but they should not have any any say in awarding the contract, right? So these are, I was listening to another yesterday. One of the professors, economic professors, he was saying that how the contracts are given. They said the minister appoints his catcher as secretary of the ministry, and they are in a group. The whole clique sort of award contracts, and they get their cuts. So the other thing is that ministers should not be allowed to appoint ministry secretaries, but a central body could suggest 3 names for the minister to select from, but minister should not appoint secretaries directly, because if minister has got a power to appoint the secretary, then they will as they can manipulate the whole system. So these are some of my thinking on these matters. I feel that the current the demonstrations, if we in 10 years time we could look back and say this is the best thing happened to Sri Lanka, because lots of people who are not involved in politics are taking interest.
Yeah.
And I feel that hopefully Sri Lanka will change for the better in the longer term, but in the shorter term we are struggling. Thanks, Chula. Sorry, I don't know, I may have
It's
taken
okay. Yeah, I think you highlighted the practical end of the problems. That means what is happening in the surface and what you see. And I don't really want to talk too much about, I know exactly how it happens when various other things got away with Sirima Bandarang Hospital, for example, in Peradeniya. So the crunch of the matter is that we need to have the civil administration and judiciary totally independent. Then only most of the things will happen. And also you mentioned about Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. Now, removing them has not ended up in a good situation for the country. Both countries are still fighting within, and nobody has actually led it. So that's why we have to not go for a violent path at all. Otherwise, we will end up like another country like, Gaddafi or Saddam's countries, because that's not going to help us. So this is why it's very complicated.
No, my example giving that is the dilemma for the current this thing, that they could go from highest in the land to a jail, and that is the problem. That is
true.
So, why they don't want to give up power.
I think I like to use the label. It's called the dictator's dilemma that they suffer from, including our leaders.
Okay. So it's a big topic to talk about. I think we'll take it up. And Kirti, you raised the hand. Professor Disanak is ready, but you can just talk quickly, please, Kirti. Are you there, Kirti? You raised the hand.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah. I think the key issue is that, as you highlighted, we need independent judiciary and meritocracy managing the civil service. That's a key issue. And of course, there are lots of other issues to change this. One of the key points we have to remember is that if you want to avoid an anarchy, we must work within the existing constitution. I know it's not a good constitution. I fully agree it's a bad one, but nevertheless, to avoid an anarchy, we must work within the existing constitution. And yesterday I was listening to Dr. Jampati Wickramaratne, who is a presidential counsel, who is a very neutral person. He's not against the government, but he talks about the legal points. So to change the situation in an acceptable legal manner, we have to work with the existing parliament. Of course, The protesters are putting a lot of pressure on the MPs. That's the right thing. But the protesters are also doing the right thing by not being violent. In fact, yesterday or day before, a group of government supporters tried to go in and try to stir up problems. But fortunately, the protesters allowed them to have their say. So they were shouting for about, I don't know, half an hour or so, saying we won't go, and they went away. So the thing is, we must remember that unless we go through the existing constitution and change it eventually, there is a potential difficulty. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, I'll just make a short introduction about you, Professor Lakshman Sanaka. Professor Lakshman Sanaka is a professor of physics and he's a senior professor from Peradeniya, who's been there for how many, 30, 40 years, and world renowned in relation to research and also teaching students. So that's just a brief introduction to you.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me, Chula?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Good evening to Sri Lankans and good afternoon to UK and Europe. So I will spend about 20 minutes going through this presentation. These are the, I kind of try to focus on the situation today in Sri Lanka with respect to the social unrest, political unrest, and the economic crisis. This is what you can see. This is a photo taken yesterday at the Goalface struggle, youth struggle. For the first time in the history, it is apolitical. There is no any political affiliation to these youths. They are not representing political parties, and there is no leader. So these are the two unique features of this youth uprising this time in Sri Lanka. The arrival of a new generation. So what they are saying is, you go home, enough is enough, to the political leaders. So in all these protesters, there is a strong message to the ruling party, ruling government. Okay, let me quickly go through how this all started happening. It started with a economic crisis, and our foreign exchange reserves came down to 1.9 billion USD, which is just sufficient to pay 1 month's bill for our essential consumer items. And we are at the edge of the bankruptcy economically. So this $1.9 billion is just sufficient for only 1 month imports for our nation. And these also largely Chinese connected fund. And up to now, most of the foreign exchange to the country came from the Middle East workers, tourism, and our exports, largely these three. And after the COVID, all these three main foreign exchange sources were depleted heavily. Now the problem is, during the last 10 years or so, even maybe 15 years or so, all these foreign, most of these foreign exchange earned by the Middle East workers largely were spent on importing vehicles, luxury goods, foreign food items, at the expense of the foreign exchange earned by these workers, and also tea exports, again, largely by the working class in Sri Lanka, and the middle class and upper middle class and the rich people were enjoying their life at the expense of these hard-earned dollars. And in 2021, the debt to GDP, gross domestic product, the ratio increased from 85% to 104. It's a quick rise, creating this economic crisis that we are facing today. So we have difficulties getting worse and worse, buying our daily needs, fuel, electricity, even paper, milk, and now it has come to medicines, urgently needed medicines in our hospital sector. And the inflation rate has gone up. It's, I think, more than 17% today. And our debt structure is really complex. And we have borrowed foreign exchange from different countries and from different sources in different ways. So it's a complete debt structure that we'll have to resolve. And we are most of these funds are borrowed from the capital market at high interest rates and from the sources such as Asian Development Bank, Japan, China, World Bank, and the latest from India. And yes, the COVID-19 pandemic was responsible for the short-term picture for the last 2 years. And it triggered, the COVID-19 pandemic triggered the situation, but the wrong decision making by the political leadership, wrong decisions made at the wrong time has led to the fast track development with regard to the economic crisis. COVID-19 triggered the thing, wrong decisions taken by the leadership at the wrong time, or delayed decisions, one might say, led to the present crisis. And it started with the organic agriculture, as we all know. So the so-called experts were trying to link the CKDU situation to the organic fertilizer, but still there are no hard found research to prove this. There is no solid research findings to show that CKDU is related to imported fertilizer. But still, government took this decision. And in addition to that, the government wanted to make this happen overnight and to become the first country in the world to go for organic agriculture. So it was a wrong decision made, and they were experimenting with the society, with the farming community, with a nation, experimenting with the nation, which is a very, very risky thing for a political leadership to engage in. And as a result, our credit rating by recognized organizations went down to C just before bankruptcy. At present, we are in that situation. And then 12th April, the ministry with the new central bank governor, they took a decision to not to pay these sovereign bonds, but to give priority to the day-to-day needs, such as food and fuel and medicine and all that. So that led to the current situation, combined with economic crisis, combined with the widespread social and political unrest. So three things we are facing now: political unrest, political instability, social unrest, and the economic crisis. These are the central bank figures, latest. This is the, GDP and this ratio, GDP and our debt ratio is at the highest today. And this is the consumer index, which is a reflection of the inflation. You can see after, from the beginning of this year, January, February, March, is rising to the highest levels. One is the consumer index, the other one is the Colombo-based consumer index, slightly different. So it's a quick rise, and people's salaries are stable, and the prices are getting doubled and doubled every month, especially the fuel, food, and other essential goods. And the new central bank governor, after taking his responsibility, has made some critical decisions. And now he has made a strong request from especially the expatriate community to help Sri Lanka in whatever the way they can, in addition to what they are doing now with the IMF and other creditors. Made a request from the expatriates, please try to help us in whatever the way you can. Send your remittances to Sri Lanka, to your relatives, to your friends, or any community groups. So even few $100 by each individual would make a big difference, because that will help the banks to build up their foreign reserves. Now, I'll go through this quick example. One of our Peradeniya alumni, Professor Sivanandan, is a professor at University of Illinois, Chicago. He agreed, he contacted me and asked me to organize this distribution of dry rations to university minor employees, the most vulnerable group, most economically deprived groups, cleaning staff, janitorial staff. We selected 3 universities, Kelaniya, Peradeniya, and Jaffna, where we have a collaborative research project also, where Professor Sivanandan is involved. Professor Sivanandan is a distinguished professor of physics, UIC, and former physics special student from Peradeniya. And now he runs 3 US companies based on his research findings related to solar cells and infrared detectors. So he's spending 3,500 USD for Kelaniya, 4,000 for Peradeniya, 4,000 for Jaffna to buy dry rations to be distributed among this group. This is a simple example where foreign expatriates helping Sri Lanka at this critical moment. Okay, these are the packet of dry rations that we distributed in Kelaniya last week to 135 people. Now next week, Peradeniya for 200 people, and Jaffna early May. I don't know the number exactly. So this kind of things are going on. This is just an example how people can help at this point. So, okay, now going back to the IMF, I think IMF have 3 kind of credit schemes to help these developing countries. And I think we are at the last scheme, Rapid Credit Facility, is a single upfront payout for low-income countries facing urgent balance of payments. So now we have to pay 7 billion during this year, out of a total of 25 billion overall to be paid, including next year's. Now the IMF's story, they are having discussions with the IMF, our ministerial team, and despite those discussions, even before those discussions, World Bank had agreed to provide $600 million to buy urgently needed medicine, and India another 1 billion for fuel and things like that. Sorry, 500 million for fuel, additional 1 billion credit line to cover food items and fuel and urgently needed items. Now the problem of this IMF deal is before they start any kind of commitments to help out Sri Lanka, there are 3 conditions. The main condition is economic. Show us how you are going to repay these debts. What is your scheme of repayment? So we have to present a scheme to the IMF and discuss with them and get their okay. And 2 prime conditions they have imposed is before they comes in to help us, there should be a political stability and the social stability. We don't have neither of those. Politically, as we see, the government and the opposition also seems to be not simply interested in resolving this problem. Social stability, instability continues, economic crisis continues. So those preconditions has to come in first before the IMF comes to help us. Now, the worst scenario is if we fall into this default state, we are just there, we will not be able to get any other credits, or because our credit rating has gone down if we are in the default state. So Sri Lanka is facing a very, very serious situation right now. And the next 2 months is going to be really difficult because there are no quick fixes coming up. The situation will get worse and worse. Of course, there are other countries, Greece and Spain and even Argentina, which has gone through similar situations. And they have somehow come out of the crisis. But only problem is, if you take, for example, Argentina in 2011 had a 81 billion loan to be paid out. And then the IMF came to their rescue. And it was not until 2016 that Argentina returned to normalcy. So 5 years of going through severe crisis, 2011 to 2016. So Sri Lanka also, I don't think we can expect any quick fixes to this situation. And the other danger is from the national side. The bank runs in a crisis situation. We are not yet there. If the people start withdrawing their bank savings, the banks will run into what we call bank runs, severe difficulties in maintaining their structure. Sorry. Okay. Now that is an economic crisis. Now, as a result of that, where are we heading? Are we heading for an anarchy, or how can we delay or prevent going into the anarchic state? Now, the response of the government, Prime Minister, even yesterday or day before, he said he will not resign. Also, he said he's going to head any interim government that the parliament is going to form. So he will not resign, and he decided to stay on as the next prime minister of an interim government. And the president has also stated similar things. He's not going to resign. So where are we now? Parliament, they are planning their strategies to come out with an interim government structure, but then the president will remain. So it will be a president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and parliament and a cabinet headed by either Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa or Mr. Sajith Premadasa or somebody, that kind of situation, but the president will remain. So political stability is a question. Now, there's one political analysis has said, what we have is not a government of a parliamentary system that is easy to be overthrown. If we had a parliamentary system, it's easier to overthrow. But what we have is a government of a presidential system, very difficult to overthrow. So there's a big question mark regarding the political stability of the country. Okay, what is the next step? We have the political instability, social unrest, economic crisis. And somehow we must try to prevent going into anarchy. Because in a state of anarchy, there's no political system, there's no law and order in the country. There can be riots, street riots, people breaking into shops and looting. And so it's a very serious situation. There's, I hope Sri Lanka will not face that situation. And even the constitutional crisis, and unless the ruling party and the opposition get together and take some quick decisions, we are heading towards a major constitutional crisis as well. But there is a very important issue here that this youth, this struggling youth, they don't see any way other than they say go home. And recently I saw in one of the TV discussions with some of these leaders, so-called leaders, that they say we don't care, we just want the president to go home, that's all. Beyond that, they don't think. They say, okay, we will work out something once he resign from the presidency. So there is a serious situation there. And also there is no leader right now for this group. So one possibility is to have a kind of political reform, interim government or whatever, under the guidance of the United Nations. Some countries have done it. So people can trust what's happening, at least to some extent, because even if you bring constitutional reforms, those constitutional reforms have to be approved by the existing parliament, which the people don't want. I mean, I don't think they will take decisions regarding this bribery or corruption or anything, because 85–90% of the present day parliamentarians are part of it. So how can you expect them to revise the constitution to get a better parliament? So these are some of the thoughts. The situation is not very favorable, and it's going to be worse and worse, and no quick fixes. Political instability, social unrest, and the economic crisis will continue at least for the next 2–3 months in a critical way. And even after that, it might take a few years before we come out of this whole crisis, political and economic. I'd like to listen to the ideas expressed by the senior people in the audience. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lakshman Dissanayake, for that summary of what has happened to us and where we are. But it's a very difficult scenario, as you say. Even if you force your member of parliament, local member of parliament, to resign, then there's no by-election, because they get appointed by the party leader again, isn't it? So you don't have an election as such.
Yeah.
So there isn't much point even locally trying that. This is the problem. So we can't really, the public can't really interfere with what is happening in the parliament other than to protest, isn't it? That's what's happened.
Yeah, protest we can make stronger and stronger. But there's only one component of the problem.
Yeah, because, but I mean, there are adequate professionals who has to get together, not one leader, but a collection of people to lead the situation. But how to get there is the issue. So you don't have an opening at all, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very sad. Anybody else's ideas? Anything else? Professor Dharmadas has raised the hand.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Dissanayake, for your ideas on this. Very short comment here. At the moment, we don't have political stability or social stability. And we have about $51 billion up to the nose. That is our debt. And we are going around and asking for more money from IMF, India, and World Bank. Coming back to Chula's example of our economic system, a bucket with a lot of holes. If we have these holes, no point of getting more loans, because they will disappear. So the main thing what we have to do now is replace that bucket with a new bucket without holes. How to get there is the most important one. Then only these loans and IMF money will help us to develop. Otherwise, it will not happen. No point of putting more money into that bucket with a lot of holes.
Agree 100%.
Kirti, you raised your hand as well.
Yes, I'm going to start with Albert Einstein, because there are physics people, quite a few physics people here. Albert Einstein said that if you try to solve a problem using the same mindset that created the problem, it's not going to work. So as long as the same mindset is there, it will be trying to patch up one or two holes in that bucket, not the change in the bucket. However, having said that, we have to work within the existing constitution. That's the only way to avoid an anarchy. If we try to bypass the constitution, it will lead to anarchy. So the question is, how do we get the transfer? Unfortunately, it's a slow process. So at least for the next, there are many possibilities. If Gotabaya decides, or if decide to leave, or if the politicians on the both sides of the parliament try to get together and invite United Nations or somebody temporarily, that may be a solution. Somehow we have to go to the next election. Next election is going to be at least a year away, maybe 3 years away. If the parliament by a majority says dissolve the parliament, the president has to do it. But that would also take 6 months to a year. Now, if there's a new parliament, I'm sure there will be lots of new faces. So as part of the election promises, they have to agree to come up with a new constitution. So these are not short-term solutions, these are long-term solutions. So if once we have a new parliament, either in a year's time or in 3 years' time, I'm sure there will be a lot of new faces. So we can talk about a detailed discussion about a new constitution. In that new constitution, there should be lots of safeguards. For example, I think Udita mentioned that there is no contracts are awarded without any principles. In fact, Udita may not know, there was a commission who looks after contracts. That was dissolved a few years ago by a certain political leader. Because similarly, 10, 15 years ago, there were lots of system safeguards. All those safeguards are taken away. So we have to bring them back. But that's the constitution change. I think just to quickly, what we have done is we have spent lots of money, borrowed a lot of money, but spent on those things which has no return. Lots of the projects we have done are complete white elephants. Even the things which have been done on useful basis, they have spent 4 times the money that would be normally spent. So we need to bring in a culture. Whatever we do a proper cost-benefit analysis, proper risk assessment, and a proper project plan, and they are overseen by professional, experienced civil service. So, I mean, that's all I can talk for many, many hours here actually, but I wouldn't. I'll stop there.
But I mean, I think it's good our gathering, but the question is, there's a huge crisis. It's like, if for me, like a patient in critical care who needs immediate resuscitation. So we need some action, and we have brought examples, and there's quite a good knowledge that has come through today, how to do this. So, and the younger generation needs to be informed as how to do it as well. So if you have any ideas or anything, how to do this, say, even if you change the parliament, that will be a step forward, won't it? So get people to resign or whatever. Please send me anything that you think about so that I can at least put it together, something for discussion next time, because you all have good ideas, but how can we implement it? It's particularly short term, in the long term as well. So we can put it together and develop something so that we can inform the younger generation as to what is the right way forward and why we are not recommending, for example, violence and so on, because our outcome will be worse. So, and it has to be within the constitution as well. So please do send anything like that. So I got Udita who's raised the hand.
Yeah, so Kirti mentioned about many white elephant projects, which sort of has bled Sri Lanka. But one of the things which many people don't talk about is the escape we had from such a project. In 2017, they were bidding for the Commonwealth Games for them to have in Hambantota. Now, I looked at this project that would have cost half of national income, and no one was protesting at that time. And usually, this sort of Commonwealth Games is next to Olympics in size, and so if you want to make a case for that, you had to start 20 years ahead and build up your case. You have to have maybe various smaller projects, smaller games, and show that you have been doing. But how Commonwealth Games bidding was done 10 days before it was supposed to be presented to Delhi Games, they took a decision. Okay, we'll go for Commonwealth Games. Now, this is the pathetic thinking of the leadership. They thought that whatever the dreams which came to their mind, and no need of how much it's going to cost, is there a value or is there anything, they just went ahead. That's because President had all power. Whatever he said has to be done. There was not much argument. There was not much analysis, not much of discussion. So for them, bigger the project, bigger the cut. So that's, I mean, so even many other white elephant projects like Mattala is probably that. There was no, it's the all power given to one man, and his whatever the directive has to be done. There was no argument, and that is the fault of the current system, which has led to so many so much wastage of money. Thanks.
This is a related issue. What you said was I agree 100%, and also with Kirti. Problem is, now according to Kirti, we must do whatever the future actions within the constitution, confined to the existing constitution. Whereas the youth wants a system change. The system means the constitution as well as the players. Okay, they need a complete overhaul, because the constitution, present constitution as well as any other new constitution, will be formulated by the lawmakers in the parliament, and their agendas are different. They have different agendas, are not purely undertaking big projects without any leading to foreign exchange income earning. They have a different agenda. So can we expect these people to come out with a fair constitution? That's number one question.
Mervyn has also raised the hand, I think. Mervyn.
A couple of comments. One was Kirti called that white elephants, and I would add another word. It's these are monuments to folly. Various leaders, have their own follies. Now, even in Britain, I have seen several follies built by Victorian billionaires centuries ago. But in their case, they use their own money, their surpluses, to build something, a bit like Taj Mahal, but less useful things. Using their own money, they didn't impose that burden on the nation for the future generations to pay that bill. Now, that's the difference between perhaps our Sri Lankan leaders and the people with follies elsewhere. The Okay, I'll leave it there. The other point is not directly related. Yeah.
Yeah, Kirti, you have also raised the hand.
Yes, I'm just trying to come back to the point that Lakshman raised. Of course, first point is, yes, the constitution change is required, as the youth say. So what I am saying is, I'm basing this on the very good information, by the way. There is no short-term possibility of changing the constitution as long as this parliament is there. So until in the shorter term, we have to work within the current constitution with the current parliament. But when the young youth are putting the pressure on, there will be a point when enough MPs will decide this is enough, we have to do something. So at that point, one possibility is that they could bring a vote of no confidence on the parliament and ask the president to dissolve the parliament. The moment that happens, there will be an opportunity for the whole country to elect a new set of MPs. So the existing MPs wouldn't change the constitution. In the new parliament, I am absolutely sure there will be hundreds of new MPs, most of them much younger. So therefore, there will be an opportunity to come up with a new constitution in a new parliament that is going to take possibly at least 2 years, but it may take 4 years. But in the shorter term, until that happens, we have to unfortunately live with the existing parliament and work with the existing constitution. And there are lots of holes, there are a lot of holes, lots of very weak constitutional things. They were brought in to put individuals into powerful positions, not for the benefit of the country. So I essentially agree with Lakshman, but it's just that there is no other short-term way. It's only a medium to long-term solution we can think about. And the other thing is, as long as there are lots of holes in this bucket, most people living abroad will be reluctant to pour money into that bucket, because we know there is written evidence everywhere now. In the last 20 years, Sri Lankan people have taken out at least $20 billion out of the country without permission. 20 billion. So if we had 3 or 4 of that billion back, there is no economic problem. The other thing is, I circulated to a few people whilst at the beginning of this meeting, you may not have seen it, how a certain politician even protected another politician's son from corruption. They are both in the parliament at the moment. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, Mervyn, you got some comments as well. Yeah,
just one comment. This is, you said short-term solutions. This may not be a solution, but this is something people practically could be alerted to look out. Faced with the shortages in medicine, food, etc., India is helping, and Chinese Prime Minister, it was reported, is having conversations to help out. Now, it's praiseworthy, but also a note of caution. When China gives things big way, that could also a way to prop up a corrupt regime that is favorable to them. So people who are closer to it need to keep a beady eye on what is happening. What is said in the public is one thing, what may be happening under the radar is another thing. So this could be an attempt to prop up and keep these people who may be thinking of leaving, not to go, with all sorts of bits of money being thrown to keep the people happy short term.
Okay, I just update about with regard to the medicine, because it was mentioned a couple of times, and I know a group of people from UK trying to send medicines, and they've contacted the Minister of Health, and they said send the money to Minister of Health. They refused. I put them in contact with the college presidents, and then they have put various letters about their requirements. And at the moment, the UK group said they were trying to contact the suppliers so that they can pay the suppliers, so the goods will get to the destinations. So you don't know. So that's the kind of thing people are trying to do. So in relation to medicines, rather than go through the government system, because they don't trust the system. So I'm very grateful today for everyone's talks. It's 1.5 hours gone now. So
Can I add
maybe,
just one quick question, 30 seconds?
yeah.
What Mervin said, I saw a news item that Indonesia has given about $340 million for medicine.
Mm.
Now, of course, that is not really good because they are all loans, but of course that will save a few patients, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think we really, I mean, you can see that all these short-term loans and everything is not going to bring us solutions. So in the long term, so we have a commitment, and we have had very good ideas today as to what should be done in the short term and long term. I think we should try and at least have an advisory kind of thing for the younger generation who are protesting. So I hope we can develop a document or something. So if you have any ideas, can you please send it to me, how to do it in the long term, whatever. I'll try to put it in the context as a kind of advisory document, very short one, not a long one, to be advisory to the current people who are protesting and how we should lead the way without having a violence situation where the outcome will be going to be worse. So we need to give some examples maybe and show it as well. So any other suggestions? This is the only suggestion that I have at the moment, but I'm committed to try to get this going. So please send your ideas to me so then I can put it together as a group.
Chula, just to add to this medical aid, because I represent APSL here, APSL relaunched their emergency relief fund just last week. It's publicized all on our website and social media. And we raised £2,000 and 6 and a quarter lakhs worth of medicine was sent to Hambantara Hospital using those through 3 pharmaceutical companies that you mentioned.
Yeah, very good. And thank you for doing whatever the contributions that can be made directly.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be the long-term solution, as you all can realize. So we need to do both.
Yeah.
Try and keep the things afloat, at least in a minimal level, and then try and rescue from this big problem that we are facing. And only few of us are seeing the future, see what's going to happen, because the juniors, the protesters don't see what is at the end of the corner, even if what they want happens. So we really need to have a concrete plan and show what we can do. So I'm grateful if you can please send us your ideas, and try to develop a document or something, and maybe circulate it to you all, and then maybe discuss at the next meeting, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Tula, what's the theme for the next meeting?
Shall we say advice to the protesters, how to make it heard or something like that?
Workable, yeah, possible.
Workable or something, because that will give us a solution in a way that
some direction, right?
Yeah, something like that. And if somebody can do a presentation, that's good. But I think I can put all together and then discuss one by one and see how to do it.
Yeah, I agree with one point Kirti made.
Yeah.
It is the youths who are struggling today. It's that pressure which has done even the changes in the.
Yeah, but we have to advise them not to go to this or that, and based on the experiences and evidence as well. If you can do a little bit of evidence of why we should not do this, then will be a good thing. And changing the constitution is a long way away, but that's something we can talk about. But in the acute situation, how to come out of this is the important thing. Yeah, I think. But we can do something. We can think about, if you put all our brains together and experience together. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, I'm so committed to get this going somehow.
Yeah, Chula, can I come in? It's good to have this discussion, but how are we going to make sure that we get somewhere with this, whatever we
will? Don't think about the outcomes, because we will get there. And I mean, I've been through these kind of programs before in trying to implement like kidney transplants and then AHS. I mean, everything started in a corner with 2 or 3 people in a corridor or a buru and sometimes. So things work out if we get together and give respect to each other about their opinions, and then have a collated opinion. So we should be able to get there. Discussions do help. And today, as you know, we all learned a lot of things about the current situation and also what can be done and what can be good and what can be bad as well. So it's a good time that we put all together and that advise the people who are protesting. You can do it through the media, you can publish in papers, you can have word of mouth and ask them to refer. I will put all these discussions on my website as well, so that people can refer to, and juniors are easily, they refer to things on the websites and so on. So we should do that. And if somebody can translate something to Sinhalese and Tamil, that will be even better. That's what we can do.
By the way, Chula, are you in Sri Lanka or in UK?
I'm planning to retire and back in Sri Lanka in about 4 or 5 months.
Oh, you're in UK at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you
you very
all.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
please keep communicating. Yeah. Oh, you're there.
Chola, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
We just got the power back.
All right.
Now,
Congratulations.
No, yeah, thank you for joining.
yes.
Because I think we had a very good discussion, and
Really?
we're trying to see how to advise the protesting people to get some outcome out of what they are doing. So,
Right.
I mean, we discussed a lot of ideas, and I'm quite open to all those ideas, and we're trying to put it together at the next round.
Right.
So if you can talk, Ratnayaka, I'm saying it will be very good. Yeah. Next
Right.
time round.
Next time. Okay, now I think you will email the recording, huh?
I'll send you the recording. You listen to it,
Right.
and you will see that we are trying to steer the younger population without coming into worse situation, just like what happened with Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein or Idi Amin or things like that. So people are saying how to get out of it. It's quite difficult because the current constitution doesn't help anything at all.
Right.
So there are long-term suggestions that people did. There are short-term suggestions that people did. So I think we have to prevent us going down further to start with. At the moment, what is being up is loans and loans and loans. A loan is not going to sort out. We'll have to somehow see how to stop the corruption so that we are not losing whatever that is coming through.
Yeah.
So these things has to be, taught in a simple way to public, saying, look into these aspects as well. So whatever the income that is coming in will be used for good purposes. So I think we can recover if we put all our brains together and find. I mean, you can see that we all have quite seen all these various political systems and everything else, different specialities, but still finding it difficult to find a path. And then you can see how juniors are. They will be clueless as to how to get this done. They only can do protests, but then what is beyond that is something that we can put together, maybe publish or talk or whatever we can do. So shall we do something next week? I mean, if you can lead it, that's fine as well. And we will try to advise what can be done and what will be good and what will be bad, basically.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Chula,
so it's
for
a good
organizing.
discussion today, very good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chola. Right.
Okay,
thank you.
shall we
See you then.
stop
Okay.
there then? Anything else?
Thank you, Kirti.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Thank you.
Prof. Lisa, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.